Thanks to our host, John Foreman, we're back for another week of MasterCoaches Weekly Buzz. We've updated our viewers on the most current issues, trends, and conversations with leaders in our sport. From the AVCA to the USA men's national team, to women's and men's collegiate volleyball, to the newest Major League Volleyball Professional League, and most recently, USAV Junior Volleyball. Now, let's go to former Olympic coach Mick Haley, who will introduce our guest today. Mick?
Well, it's really my pleasure to introduce Jenny Hahn, Executive Director of the JVA. And we've got so many questions for Jenny. I'm going to jump right into this. But Jenny, I have a kind of a three-pronged question. One is, really, what is JVA? Two, how did it come about that people felt like they needed JVA? And three, what is JVA looking at right now as far as providing services to its members? And I'd let you think about this just a second. As I say, in the history of volleyball, and Brian and I are old enough, and maybe Bob, to go back all the way to...
I'm old enough too, Wick.
I'm old enough too.
All right, I'll not leave you out, then I'll include you also. But we go back a long way to where there's always been an alternate approach to USA Volleyball's control over volleyball. And as junior volleyball has developed, we first had back in the 70s, and maybe even before that, the ANBA that appeared, trying to become or get more support for a junior national program. They really started by training coaches. They trained from 9 to 12 coaches who coached for a long time and started junior programs from Atlanta all over the country, Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, in Texas, Chicago, all over the place. And still USA Volleyball maintained control of the regions and that sort of thing. And then we went through a period of time where we had an explosion in number of players. And then it seemed like some things happened. And all at once we have an alternate group form that seems to be meeting a need of a lot of people out there. And so I just kind of wanted to give the build-up to this. Over the last 15 years, JVA has become quite prominent, and I believe, if I'm not correct, and you can correct me, has not only established its own championship, but has partnered with the AAU championship. So if you can just answer those first three questions I asked, and our other coaches will be asking you more specific questions. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. A couple things. First of all, right at the outset, I want to clarify the word alternate. JVA is not really an alternate. What we are is, our association is a trade association, for a professional trade association for club directors and their staff. Our focus is not on being the NGB or, being a, mass events group like AAU. Our real mission is to really provide the club directors with resources that they need for them to be successful, for them to grow, and to be profitable. And I guess that's the why. We started way back when, and in a sense, we didn't want to be an alternate to USA Volleyball. We wanted to be an advisory group. There were decisions that were being made that weren't always beneficial for the kids or the clubs, and we thought, well, let's just form an advisory group and we'll work with USAV. And due to circumstances, some of it we probably could have controlled, a lot of it we couldn't have controlled. We ended up kind of taking a divergent path. So, and I feel, and we all felt, the original group that met. There was about 33 club directors that met to talk about it. We felt that there really was a place in the world of volleyball for an independent association for junior volleyball. Somewhere that, we could speak, similar to the AVCA serves a purpose for college coaches. We felt that that was really important, and that was our goal. And I mentioned AVCA. We're actually a partnership with them. All of our members are also members of AVCA because we feel our missions align quite similarly. But our main focus is education, resources. Networking is huge, bringing clubs together and talking about the issues and what keeps them up at night, what they're proud of. Insurance is a resource that we never thought we'd be in the insurance business, but we found that we could offer the clubs an event insurance that was all inclusive. If you want to play a USAV event, everybody has to be a member of USAV. If you want to play an AAU event, everybody has to be a member of AAU. If you're in a JVA event with JVA insurance, you can be USAV, you can be AAU, you don't even have to be JVA. You could be the church team across the street. We just want everybody. It's just very welcoming, very inclusive rather than exclusive. And our members, our clubs that belong to us, we make regulations, send out guidelines. We don't want to get into a lot of bureaucracy. However, we do have rules and regulations when it comes to coaches certification and background screenings and safety protocols, policies, things like that. So basically that's what we're here for. We started hosting events, and Mick, you mentioned a championship. Our World Challenge it's not meant to be a national championship. It's just a mid-year kind of our crown jewel championship. And unfortunately, convention centers are only so big. You can only get so many teams in. And we were struggling with who do we accept and who don't we accept. And what we heard from our member clubs is that they wanted to have a World Challenge type tournament in their area. So we do have 5 events that we host. But those events also fund our resources and the programs that we offer, as well as cover our administrative staff and our offices. One of the things you asked Mick is, why JVA? And I think I mentioned the independent group, the independent voice, where we don't have more than one hat on our head when we're sitting down at the table and talking about what's good for club volleyball. And the other thing that's been really wonderful is the networking. The clubs getting together and sharing ideas, and it's been really interesting because you guys are all amazing coaches. We're all super competitive, but at the same time we realize that we need to work together. We need each other to thrive. So it's really interesting. We'll have a pre-event conference with a group of club directors, and then the next day they're battling out on the court and yelling at the referee because they're letting them get away with that. So, but it's a great group. I love our members. And the other thing that our group does is we all share our resources. A lot of the content we develop, but the majority of the content that we provide through webinars, our publications, our seminars, our sessions at the AVCA convention, they come from our member clubs. And, they share their knowledge with everybody else. And that's our biggest resource, is our members too. Mick, did I miss anything there?
Yeah, because he went blank, so it must have been something you really hit.
He dozed off.
Yeah, you did quite well, Jenny. And the only thing that maybe one of the other coaches can touch on when we get there, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Gimmillaro right now, but Brian, you might want to think of Ruth or Bob asking about cost relative to opportunity there. So Brian, why don't you take it over?
Okay, I was muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, okay. My question, it really is about club volleyball right now. Where do you see it? What do you see now? It's so different in so many states. What do you see? What are you recommending to your members? And where do you see it in the summer or in the fall? Have you any predictions, any ideas, any crystal balls, whatever you might come up with? How are you advising right now?
So we've hosted a number of webinars. One was specifically directed to the indoor programs, and the other one is directed to the beach programs because they have different, different protocols and procedures that they're going to need to follow. And it's, Brian, it's bob and weave. Every state is different. We recommend that every club, obviously their athletes are there. And in Ruth, you mentioned, some clubs might be starting to kind of come in under the wire and get kids in ahead of time before they're able to. They want those kids back to be part of their program. I mean, that's the worst thing to do is to, cause harm to your kids or to have a cavalier attitude about their safety. So safety of the kids is the primary motive. And then following the guidelines of your local health authorities, your local government authorities. And then if the time is there to open, start small, start slow, do the spacing, do the distancing, do the sanitizing, have signs up. And honestly, the biggest conversation that clubs need to have is with their families, because they need to trust their families that they will stay out of the gym if they've been in contact with anybody who's had the virus, or if any of their family members has been in contact. They need to have that communication with their families and trust their families. And we all talk about this it's personal safety will kind of help the whole world of safety. But, and a little bit further too, the other thing is there's in parts of the country that have been allowed to start opening, there's clubs looking together and doing very small scrimmage type things where it's 4-on-4 spaced out. So they get a little of that competitive juices going, but they're still, self-distancing and being safe.
To go along with that, what do you hear from clubs in terms of their financial stability? Are they reaching out to you? Are they doing okay generally?
They're probably doing as well as we are, which is horrible. We had to cancel 3 large events, and when our board is committed to 100% refunds, and I have a finance committee call at 4:00, and we're hoping that's possible. But our clubs are in dire straits. They've had to shut their doors. They've been, refunding portion of their fees. And that was one thing that we really helped the clubs with, that we've gotten so much kudos and praise, is we wrote an article that was directed to the parents on, what can go into a refund, because if a parent's looking at an 8-month season and they're shut down for 2 months, they're thinking, I should get 25% of my club dues back. And so we explained to them how the process, where generally in the first 3 months, 75% of that money's already gone, on uniforms and equipment and entry fees, things like that. So we kind of outlined, what can be refunded and what can't be refunded. And we've had a lot of really good response on that. So they're struggling, Brian, that's for sure. And I worry about the middle-sized clubs the most.
Yeah, I have a million questions, but I think I want to turn it over to Bob Bertucci. Bob has an interesting perspective because he was a Division I women's coach, and now he's a Division I men's coach. So I want to turn it over to him right now. Bob Bertucci.
Thanks, Brian. Jenny, it's great to see you again. I do have a couple of questions. You mentioned the JVA World Challenge, and that recently had to be canceled. That was one of the events you had to cancel. And you kind of started to address it. How did it affect the JVA?
That's about $1 million revenue loss.
That hurts.
So it does. It hurts a lot. And, we do have a moderate savings account and a very moderate investment account. So hopefully our members, that's the other thing. I'm so proud of them. Not a huge majority, but a good number are willing to let us hold on to their fees for next year's event. And we kind of bribed them a little bit with first dibs on the best hotels. So that kind of helps a lot too. But, it definitely is, it's a factor. But the other thing, Bob, that we really miss is, we're in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and our members are all over the world, but all over the country. And the events is when we get FaceTime and when we get to share time with our members and, see them and socialize, and that hurts too. That hurts a lot too.
Well, I saw that you were going to run a virtual world challenge. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so I have people complain about millennials. I have almost fully millennial staff. I love them. They are just so creative and so willing to do anything out of the box. If you follow our social media, be sure to catch the EL show. They're like crazy. But anyway, it's on Instagram. They came up with the idea and actually I started it because we already got all the medals, and we have beautiful custom-made medals for the World Challenge. We already have them. We've already paid for them, and they're dated with 2020 on them. So the girls came up with the virtual challenge. It's going to run Saturday and Sunday of the June, let me look at the date, June 13th, 14th, or 14th, 15th. And it's steps. So, and the teams, they have to register, coaches have to register their team. All the kids have to download a free step tracker app. And it's how many steps a team can get in 48 hours. And they can run, they can walk, they can play tennis, they can walk a golf course, they can jump rope, however they want to do it, walk the dog, get their steps, and we'll be able to award medals. But they're also doing like crazy stuff and contests on social media where we have other prizes too. And I think we might even have one or two of our foreign teams that are going to be able to join in because it's virtual.
That's great.
Well, that's great. So you're actually getting the athletes to do some kind of activity. So it's exercise. It might not be actually volleyball, 6 against 6, but at least there's some activity involved. And then there's prizes for whoever does the best or the first one to do something, I guess, and things like that.
Yeah, and we hope that the teams within a club challenge each other too. It'd be fun to see a club competition as well.
Great. Well, I might as well ask this question before we forget. The one that Mick had mentioned, it's great that the clubs are rolling over their fee with JVA for the next year. I'm sure that helps, and that's great support from the clubs. And it sounds like if they're doing that, hopefully they're going to be able to do somewhat the same with their club members. So everybody stays solvent going into this next year. But what is the cost for JVA, and kind of give us some ideas about how somebody becomes a member of JVA?
Okay, whenever I have this conversation, they scratch their head and they say, really, is that it? So for a club to be a JVA member club, the minimum you need to do is have the club director join as a member, and that's $120 a year. And that covers both the AVCA and the JVA membership. That's it. Now, if you would like to register and have your coaches be members, we do have organizational memberships where your entire staff can be a member of both associations. And then if you do need insurance, we offer our insurance program. It's $110 per year per team. And that covers the kids, the coaches, the club management, and that covers them whatever activity they do. Whether it's a JVA activity or it's, they play in a church league across the street, they're covered.
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm sure, Ruth, I know she's a good friend of yours, and I'm sure she has 101 questions for you, but we'll try to limit her to just 2 or 3.
Oh, and Bob, I should follow up too that all our members are also required to follow the safe sport guidelines. So if they don't belong to USA Volleyball, we had NCSI as our screening group before USA Volleyball did, because they're the best in the business. So, and we do require that and the abuse prevention training. And it's $25 and it's good for 2 years.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks.
Ruth?
Okay. Bob, thank you. I don't have 1 million questions. I have 2 million questions just for you. Jenny, I just wanted to say a few things before I ask you the one big question. And I wanted to say thank you for all that JVA does and your staff, because I followed you since March 8th. And have been educated on everything from how to apply for a PPP, how to handle your business, whether you're a nonprofit organization or a business. If I were a facility owner, if I were a club director, and I shared so much of your information with so many facilities here in Dallas that I think people forget that JVA is like a Google in themselves, because everything that you provide for a small membership, I just can't tell you, because you look for resources out there. There's lots of resources for coaching, but there aren't a lot of resources of what you're providing. So with that, kudos to you. Now I get to have the question, right? Are you ready?
Can I tell you, one of our in-house mottos is turning gym rats into business rats.
Well, you've obviously done a great job of that. All right, my question. All right, AAUs. They've pushed theirs to July.
I know.
You have lots of partnership with AAU. What is going to happen now with AAUs, and what's your prediction?
First of all, I have to say, when Dr. Gowdy came out with his announcement that, they were still holding the tournament, my first reaction was, oh my gosh, are you kidding? But then my second reaction was, kudos to them to get that conversation going. Like, what's appropriate, not what's not appropriate. Like, I was living on the conversation around it. We don't have any decision-making power with the AAU. We do meet with their board once or twice a year and share ideas. When we first started kind of partnering with them on the World Challenge and then the AAU Championships, we did offer some suggestions to improve the program, to improve the tournament. We suggested the international division. We suggested having it a slightly later, but not too late. And they've been very open-minded. And I've been really happy to see the growth in both our events.
Are you hearing that clubs are going to attend the AAU?
I heard before they announced they were opening new divisions, I had heard 500 teams.
Okay.
So I'm not sure.
All right. Well, that's great. And I want to thank you. And I'm going to turn this over to Mick now. and he's going to kind of summarize, and then he'll be also introducing our new guest speaker for next week.
Very cool.
Okay, Mick. We are, as
Yeah,
John
sorry.
would say,
I missed the boat on the unmute, but this has been really interesting, and I appreciate all this. You know, last week we had the chairman of the board of USAB on, and it just seemed to me that every bit of information we were getting would indicate that there wouldn't be any play this summer, and yet at the end of this little buzz session that we had, I couldn't get USAB to say that they were canceling their events, and yet 3 hours later they canceled every event they have. So I'm not sure what is so sacred about this or what is so scary about it, but it does make me want to know how you will operate differently in the future, because obviously some of these things are pointed out either deficiencies or weaknesses that you don't want to get caught in again. What are one or two things that you really are looking at to maybe function differently as an organization, or with what you supply to your members that would be keep you in the hunt, so to speak?
Right. That's a really, first of all, I'm going to come to USA Volleyball's defense. One of the issues that keeps an event director from canceling an event too soon is the contracts with the convention center. If there's a force majeure clause, you have to wait for the government or the health authorities to tell you you can't have the event, so you don't end up forfeiting a lot of deposits and things like that. So it's kind of usually a contractual thing. I have a list, I have a running list going, Mick, on things I wish I had known. And I'm sure every business does too. One, check your business interruption insurance and make sure it covers viruses, because most of them don't. And the obviously having a deeper reserve. You know, we obviously, if we were super smart, we would have had a year's administrative budget back in our back pocket. So we're not relying on, the 1 year income.
And that might be something for your members also, right? Your clubs?
For sure. Mm-hmm. And we've been sharing information on that, having that rainy day fund. It was interesting. I was on a conference with some Canadian sports promoters, and the Canadians are much more fiscally responsible than us Americans. I did find that to be interesting. They all had a rainy day fund. But, and one of the things that we found to the positive is JVA is an international association. And it's, the value in communication is FaceTime. It's great to get on a conference call, but it's annoying. Who's talking, who's not talking, who's paying attention, who's not. So, we try to get around the country, which is expensive. And I think for the next year or two, we'll be hosting member meetings, with Zoom, and we can do it more often because it's so economical.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm sorry we're running out of time, but I have to tell you this has been extremely, extremely informational, and I want to thank you so much for coming on and being so candid and giving us kind of a straight story, so to think. We have something maybe that will interest you for next week. We have another great guest, as we have with our first 5 here, in Dr. Bill Stetson. Some of you know Billy. He was a setter at USC around the time that Dusty Dvorak was there, so they had 2 of the best setters in the whole country at the same school for a while. He went on to become a physician. He now is part of the Stetson Powell orthopedic group in Burbank, California, and he's an adjunct clinical professor at USC Keck School of Medicine. And because he is the team physician for both our women's and men's national teams and Olympic teams, Ruth had the idea of, let's bring somebody on. You've heard all of these things happening, but nobody has really brought on a medical person to tell us how we can transition back into sport. And Bill absolutely jumped at the opportunity when I called him and invited him. He jumped at the opportunity of coming back on. He has got some ideas that are really special. He's also got some information and opinions about how we can get back into sport, which should interest you, your group, as well as USAD. And he's also got some facts, and he wants to highlight some fiction he thinks is out there. And then the last thing he has got a special insight into the Korean Sports Federation of how they've gotten their sports teams back out there, and testing procedure that he thinks may be the thing that will work for us. So we're so excited to get to next Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday, and get him back on. So I want to thank you for being here, but I hope you and all the rest of the people listening will tune in to us next week, because this should be really good, Ruth.
Oh,
Okay,
that's
so
really so
join-
valuable.
So Mick, thank you. Jenny, thanks. Join us next week for our Volleyball Master Coaches, and follow us on Facebook, Volleyball Master Coaches. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, VB Master Coaches. And back to our host, John Foreman, so he can briefly talk about his upcoming coaching conversations. John? Okay, John.
Now I'm unmuted. All right.
All right.
There you go. No problem.
We needed to use the mute on Mick.
Thanks, Ruth. Thanks for everybody. Yeah. Thanks everybody for showing up. Even one Miss Sue Gazansky who showed up late. Sue, you can go to the Facebook page and rewind and watch all the way back from the beginning, since you missed about 28 minutes of it. But that's okay. We're still glad to have you. As Ruth alluded to, this is part of a series of conversations that I've been running since we've unfortunately been in this COVID crisis. So I encourage you to check those out. You can find them on my blog, coachingvb.com. You can also get updates on the page that this is streaming on if you're watching on Facebook, Coaching Volleyball, and also Twitter, coachingvb. So thanks for checking us out, and we'll see you next week.